Our next company on the stage now is Nouveau Monde Graphite.
Guten Abend, mein Name ist Marc Jasmin, ich bin Kanadier, Franco-Kanadisch und normalerweise ich will meine Präsentation in Deutsch machen, in Deutschland, aber für mich ist Deutsch eine dritte Sprache und ich glaube, das ist einfacher und schneller in Englisch zu präsentieren. Aber ich bin später verfügbar beim Kiosk für eure Fragen zu antworten und ich verspreche, ich versuche es in Deutsch zu antworten. Danke, aber now I'm going to shift to English et si vous avez compris, je peux aussi très bien vous répondre en français plus tard. So thank you very much, Lisa. So rapidly, Nouveau Monde Graphite is a fully integrated graphite project in North America, located about 2 hours, 30 minutes north of the Montreal airport. And the idea is to have a vertically integrated model from mine to battery material for North American customers that wish battery material for lithium-ion batteries. And we also happen to aim to produce a carbon-neutral product at the doorsteps of the North American market. We are on the New York Stock Exchange listed under the ticker NMG for Nouveau Monde Graphite, and also on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the ticker NOU. We trade about 150,000 shares a day. Wir sind auch notiert in Frankfurt, aber es gibt überhaupt kein Volumen und das ist einfacher für uns, für euch, uns zu kaufen in New York. Aber wir versuchen, die Volumen zu steigern und zu helfen und deshalb bin ich hier in Deutschland für meine Firma zu präsentieren. So what we have is a fully integrated model. If we look at the mine, it is in a region called Matawini, 2.5 hours north of Montreal. We aim to produce there 106,000 metric tons per year, of which about 2/3 will be sent to Bécancour, 2.5 hours northeast of Montreal. So imagine a 100-kilometer triangle where basically we could produce all the battery material that is needed for our North American customers. Early last year, we also bought another project that was recently owned by Mason Graphite, a project that is earmarked to be 500,000 tons per year, and that if everything is okay and we're able to finance and build this first project, we will move copy-paste and move on with this much larger project located about 8 hours away from Montreal. Why is graphite important in the first place? Warum ist Graphit wichtig? People may not realize, but when you look at the anode or the negative side of a battery, about 95% of it is made out of graphite. So in today's world, without any graphite, there is no anode. Without an anode, there is no battery. And without a battery, forget about energy storage, forget about electric vehicles, and forget about home appliances we use every weekend at home. It is impossible today to make a lithium-ion battery without graphite. What we do is a product that's called coated spheronized purified graphite, CSPG, so a value-added product that each step of the transformation creates value. So what we do is not a commodity, it is a product that is ready for battery use and highly specialized, made to specs for our customers, such as General Motors and Panasonic Energy, with whom we already have long-term offtakes signed. What we've done differently from others, over the years, since 2018, we've been running demonstration plants, pilot plants to produce samples, because the customers want to see our material made on commercial scale equipment. So we've invested 125 million Canadian dollars over the years just to produce the samples to qualify with our customers. So this is a long-term process. There are great barriers to entry for anyone to do so, but we truly believe we have one of the very best teams in the Western world to produce anode material. We're now at phase 2, in the middle of the screen, basically ready to build, ready to finance our mine. We hope to start construction by next year, pending financing, but we're definitely ready and everything is lined up. We are shovel ready, have all the key permits, have cheap electricity blocks confirmed, which by the way are 4 cents per kilowatt hour in Quebec for long-term power, so very, very cheap power, especially compared to Europe. If we are successful, we hope we can copy-paste, move on to the project that would be 5 times larger and basically show a growth story over the years afterwards. If we look at the shares outstanding, basic, we have about 152 million shares, fully diluted 252 million. The warrants there may be scary. They are European-style warrants, meaning these 83 million warrants that you see can only be exercised at a final investment decision and basically are a price protection for strategic investors, which you see on the right-hand side of the slide. Amongst these investors, you will see General Motors owns 8% of our company, Panasonic Energy owns 8% of our company, Mitsui, a large Japanese conglomerate, owns 9% of the company, Pallinghurst, strategic equity out of the UK, owns another 12%. So the strategics own about 38% of shares outstanding. The governments, maybe Canada, through the CGF, Canada Growth Fund, has 13%, and the Quebec government 17%. So we have very strong sponsors, investors, strategics, governments, and about 1/3 of our shares are the float of the company or the remaining of the shares. We're currently covered by 5 analysts. Of those most likely to be present in Europe, I would think of National Bank Financial, who started coverage about 3 weeks ago, and perhaps also Cormark Securities, which operates out of Toronto, Canada. What we've signed last year are actually off-takes, long-term take-or-pay based on formulas, both with General Motors and Panasonic. At the same time, they also invested $50 million US, or 25 million each, and they've also agreed to the principle that they would invest at a final investment decision. So basically, they are long-term partners with whom we are working for. You see a few pictures here. I'll bring to your attention that despite the fact that electric vehicle sales are slowing down, especially in North America, künstliche Intelligenz, artificial intelligence, and the demand for energy is driving very quick demand. Panasonic has reiterated its full-year guidance, actually increased it because they'll be selling more batteries for artificial intelligence. General Motors as well, what the hell, have announced they would be producing as well, getting into the field of battery storage. So a very good mix for us and a very good moment in time for Nouveau Monde Graphite. A few things have happened recently. Excuse me, I'll just keep writing time. On July 17th, our stock went up about 25% that day, same as others in the sector. The U.S. Department of Commerce, or the U.S. Department of Commerce, to use a short, announced countervailing dumping duties against China of 105%, which really changes the dynamic of pricing in North America. In Canada, we have the advantage of being able to use Chinese technology, and if we control the the intellectual property, we are eligible to sell in the US, but if we were to manufacture in the US or build our plant, it would cost about 30% more because of the tariffs on steel and others. So we have a cheaper CapEx base, very low OPEX because of the electricity cost, and also are available to access Chinese technology even if we're aiming or targeting the US market. China controls about 3/4 of the mines in graphite, which you see on the right-hand side, but nearly 100% of the transformation into value-added battery material. It is one of the most concentrated critical minerals in terms of transformation as we speak. There are 0 mines in the United States. It could take up to 10 years to get a permit. and there's only one mine in the whole G7, which is in Canada, but at end of life, it has about a few years left. So we are positioning ourselves perhaps to be the only graphite mine in the G7 within the next 3 years. Right here, right now, if we look at the demand of our customers, General Motors and Panasonic in the US, this equates at full capacity at about 3 times what we are proposing to produce in the short term, or what is covered by our offtakes. Yes, electric vehicles have slowed down in North America, but demand is there right now, right here from our customers. I'll say unfortunately, but over the last few months, the military aspect has taken a very different proportion, especially in Europe, should I say. And graphite is critical for defense applications. For example, every time you think of a stealth application, you need graphite to block the heat signature and the electromagnetic signature. And China, which is very strategic, has blocked off exports of expandable graphite, which is needed for stealth applications. So the US no longer will have to produce their own stealth applications, which we can do. Canada is also trying to position itself as a buying club for the whole G7. And if you follow Prime Minister Carney, he's very vocal about supporting the G7 and becoming the supplier for our partners and allies in Europe, including the United States of America as well. Also, the investments that the Canadian government would do in critical minerals, such as Nouveau Monde Graphite, would count towards the objective of the 5% contribution to NATO. So, very strong signal, hopefully, that the Canadian government will further support us, and we're waiting with great anticipation the next federal budget, which will be around November 4th, upcoming November 4th. If you look at 2021, the price of anode material, which is a Chinese price, has come down significantly, which explains a long-term trend of our stock and others. Although since December, you'll see we have a very nice stock chart. What is actually happening is the North American market is decoupling from China for 3 reasons. They're willing to pay a geopolitical premium, they're willing to pay a carbon neutrality premium, and they're willing to pay a logistical savings premium. So if these countervailing anti-dumping duties stick, which we'll know on December 5th, the price for China material in North America will increase dramatically and will become overnight extremely competitive with the Chinese, with an OPEX cost which is basically as good as theirs. We published our feasibility study late March. Rapidly, the total capex expected is $1.3 billion US dollars. The net present value at 8% is $1.1 billion. If you look at the total expected revenue less operating cost, EBITDA run rate is $314 million. We're working currently on scenarios to lower the capital intensity of the project, and most likely we'll start the mine first, which is a $450 million US investment, which is much more digestible by the market. Overall, our strategy is to confirm the offtakes over the next few months, go see the the lenders, confirm their interest, and we already have $1 billion US of letters of intention, but we now want additional commitments to the equity being raised. Then hopefully we come and see the market, everything tied in, offtakes, debt, and the public investors would be the last euro or dollar in our deal, which would think, if they believe in our model, in the financials we're showing, should be much easier than going upfront asking investors to follow us for a company that we wish to de-risk quite rapidly over the next few months. Cost curve, I've mentioned. Quebec is extremely competitive with China on OPEX because of cheap hydro. It also helps us very much on the ESG side, which is extremely important for us and for European investors. A few pictures, $125 million Canadian goes a long way. This is our site, mine site, external, not the machines, what we have currently. Recent view, it's in 2025. those that have geology questions, I will be available later to answer them. Bécancour, what now? How are we going to finance this? So I'll see you at my kiosk, dritte Allee, links. Und ich bin verfügbar, ich bin dabei. Vielen Dank für eure Aufmerksamkeit.